In this video, Les will be forge welding a brand new Damascus pattern that he's never made before. If you watch it all the way until the end, we will cut off a piece of the billet and show you how the first forged pattern will look like. Thank you to our sponsors who made this video possible. Please click the links in the description below.
I guess I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Leszek and welcome to our Kingdom Forge, which I share with a couple of my mates, Paul and Elliot. And basically between three of us we do everything from bottle openers to gates and railings, but I concentrate on knives. That's why Vince is here to do a little bit of filming on my process. Alright, so let's get it done. That's the forge that I built recently. It's rough, but it works. Couple of Amal burners, a few afterburners. That's pretty much what you want, in my personal opinion. Super effective for the Verturi style burners. Of course, if you want to get fancy, then ribbon burner is the way to go. From what I hear, I haven't had a chance to try one myself yet, but at some point I'm gonna get one. First things first. Let's get the temperature up. So this will need about 10 minutes to get to temperature, and then we're gonna put the stack in. So what we're gonna start today is a 30 layers of steel, classic mix 15 and 20, 1095, and a bit of pure nickel inside to get a bit of a brighter pattern. And we're gonna try something new. I haven't done that pattern before, so I have no clue how that's gonna turn out. So looking forward to that. And now we wait, essentially. All right, so forge is getting to temperature. It's hot enough in there to put our stog in. So I'm just gonna pop it in there and let it suck up the heat up to welding temperature, which is about 1000 degrees, 1100. And yeah, we let it suck up the heat. When you do it, you kind of want to make sure that the heat penetrates all the way through the steel. You don't want to take it out and start forging it too early, because even the outside might look hot enough, the inside might be still cold, and that will create problems in the future, cold shots and other issues. So especially when you're working with the big stacks, take your time, let the steel get nice and hot before you do any forging with it. So at the moment you see that it starts to pick up. It's been there for like a minute or two, so there's barely any color in. But what I'm gonna wait for is for the stack to get nice and yellow, pretty much the same color as the inside of the forge. That's a good indicator for the temperature. If you want to go fancy, you can get a thermocoupler and just drill a hole in the forge and get yourself a proper measurement. But I can't be bothered. 100 quid, something like that for it. It's not like super expensive, but they do get messed up fairly quickly. At least the one I bought a couple of years back, it got melted pretty much straight away after a couple of uses. Maybe I used it wrong, I'm not really sure. Yeah, but it's the same problem with the homemade forges as well. They do kind of disintegrate after a year or two of usage. You kind of need to redo the whole lining again and essentially remake the whole forge. You can buy one if you want. There's a really good company, Swan, that makes professional forges for the farriers mostly. But from I heard they're really good for forge welding as well. But they're a bit on the expensive side, and you're still gonna need to redo the lining once in a while. We actually got one here that's kind of on the floor right now, but this is the Swan forge. So that's the old Swan forge. It's essentially air-fed forge, is not a Venturi. You got essentially a little fan on the side that will push the air through the air trimmer as the gas goes in, and it gives it's much more fuel efficient that way, but it's of course a bit more complicated in the making. That will set you back 1,200 pounds more or less for the brand new one. They are popping up sometimes on the internet, so if you want to get one, but they're very good. They're very, very, very efficient, and they last for much longer than, you know, homemade forges. At least in my opinion. Yeah. So it starts to heat up. The layers are, you can clearly see how the heat transfers into their stack. On the outside much hotter than on the inside. So we're pretty much ready for a first step. What I would usually do before it gets completely heat up, I'll get it on the power hammer and just gently hit those layers nice and tight together, so if there's any gaps, they're basically closed off. So, just couple hits. Nice and gentle. Tiny bit of borax. Don't put too much, because it might create the same problems that we want to avoid. And what borax does, it actually doesn't help with the forge welding itself. It creates a layer around your stack and will prevent the oxygen to get closer to the steel. So that should prevent any oxidization in between the layers of the stack if we end up with any gaps. There shouldn't be any gaps. I usually don't even use the borax if I got a nice tight stack, because there shouldn't be any oxygen going in there. But this is like an extra layer of security for your stack, so you don't end up wasting all your work. Because the thing with cold shots, you're not gonna notice them until you start grinding thin, so you're gonna do all the forging, and you might end up with a knife that you're gonna have to throw away, unfortunately. So now, we're gonna let it cook until the whole thing gets into the temperature. So what we're gonna do first, we're gonna forge weld that stack that we got nice and tight, and then we're gonna actually start forging it sideways. So instead of getting the layers down, we're gonna go with the layers, and we're gonna start forging it this way. That will disturb the layers and actually start forming our pattern. I'm gonna do a bit of an offcut later on, and I'll show you how the pattern looks after the first heat. Alright, so it is getting nice and hot in here. The stack is pretty much the same color, but I'm gonna leave it in there for another couple minutes just to make sure that the temperature is the same through the whole stack before we actually start forging it. So the stack now is pretty much the same color as the inside of the forge. So that would mean that we are about 1000 degrees. And first thing I do, I just hit it a couple times. Not very hard. Just to set that initial weld. And I put it back in. Get it up to the temperature again before I start forging it out properly. It looks nice and welded, even though we had that initial split because my tag weld let go. Now it looks quite solid. It's gonna go back in the forge. Get it up to temperature. You don't want to let it cool down too much, because if there's any issues with the weld, it's gonna start splitting. And now that the steel was hot for certain amount of time, the scale is going to form much more quickly, and this is what you want to avoid. So now I'm going to draw it out a little bit longer, and I'm going to start forging it sideways like I showed on the hood earlier. As you see, when it goes to like an orange color, then you want to stop forging, you want to put it back in the fire, get it nice and hot again. So when you're forging this way, as you're drawing it out, temperature control is the must, because this is not how the steel likes to move. It might create splits, so you need to keep it nice and hot and keep an lookout if there's any splits. If there's any splits happening, just basically forge it back flat, and essentially you just need to keep an eye on it all the time.
Thank you to our sponsors today. We have Multi-Tool Products Europe, who do the 84 engineering belt grinders, Clock Knives, who are a 3-generation family-run business for heat treatment and Damascus billets, and GFS Knife Supplies. They have lightning-fast deliveries and ships worldwide. Quick deliveries for a massive selection of grinding belts, all types of steel stock, rock blade heat kilns, heat treatment quenching oils, and every material you'll need for your knife making handles. Please check out their links on the description below, as they help us in making more videos like these.
So now the stack has cooled down, so I cut off a little bit for you to have a look closer how the pattern has distorted. So you see, that's how the inside of the stack looks like after the first heat and forging it out this way. It looks pretty cool, but if you like start forging it out straight again, flat, it's just gonna straight up those lines, so it's not gonna be doing much. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna cut up that stack into pieces, we're gonna restack it and forge it out again.